Welcome to this landscape tutorial. Today we'll be painting a colourful river scene using water mixable paints, both gouache and watercolor. I'm going to be painting on canvas board, which is approximately 25 by 30 centimeters or 10 by 12 inches for those who prefer inches. To the right of the canvas is my palette. You'll see on the top left we have white, lemon yellow, yellow ochre, cerulean blue, ultramarine, purple, vermilion, a bright red, crimson, a darker red, and viridian, a green. I'm using the palette knife to mix the colours. Firstly, I'm mixing some white and some ultramarine blue. Now that's a bit dark, so I'm going to add some more white to it. So I'm starting the painting using a 1" or a 25mm flat brush. This will be used for painting the sky. Starting from the top, I'm doing small circles, a big sweeping motion like this. I want to make it look natural and I don't want straight lines to appear in the sky. It's going to be a bit darker over on this side. So I'm adding more ultramarine and now just a little white on the tip of the brush. I'm painting over what's already been applied to lighten it. And I'm going to go right to the edge of the painting. I'm adding a bit more white and a touch of water to make the paint flow. So I want to stop the sky around here. I'm mixing various quantities of blue and white for the sky to make the light and dark areas for the clouds. You can see some of the brush strokes. I don't mind if they show through lightly, but not too harsh. I'm using water only and whatever's on my brush, and I'm going over some of the paintwork that's already down. Now we'll go the opposite way too. This helps to blend the colour and to smooth out the strokes. So I'm adding white to the blank area of the canvas. This will cover the canvas texture, and if I add any blue it will help it to flow better. I haven't cleaned my brush, so there's a tiny bit of blue. There will be lighter areas where the sun shines. The sun is coming over from the left. Because we're using an opaque white, we can work over the existing paintwork. Not too much. This isn't something we could do if we were using a translucent watercolour. It is something you do quite a lot when using oil or acrylic. So using this opaque white emulsion, it's somewhere in between traditional watercolour painting and using oil paint. Now we're adding a bit of blue to the top left corner. It spreads easily because we've already added some white there, and the paint hadn't yet dried. I've got a smaller bristle brush, a flat one, and I'm going to use this to smooth some of the rough edges. So I won't add any paint, I'm using a dry brush. Now it's time to add some paint, a bit more white. So a bit of white and a bit of blue around the edge. You can make it up as you go along, the sky is ever changing. A bit more blue here. As you can see, even though I'm using a smaller brush, I'm still using circular strokes when applying the colour. I'm adding white and scuffing the edges of the clouds using this bristle brush to make them look fluffy. You can see the harsh blue line at the bottom disappear after a few strokes. Now we're adding a bit more blue and mixing it in. We can also soften the bottom left edge by adding more white. I'm extending the sky a little behind the trees that I haven't yet painted. This section to the right will be the river bank. The left bank will be here, and running through the middle will be a river slightly off centre. Using the palette knife, I've taken a small amount of lemon yellow and I'm mixing it with the sky blue. There's also a bit of white. I'm using the silicone chisel tool to make the initial application of paint. To be honest, it's quite good at spreading the paint on the canvas, and also it saves a bit of brush cleaning, so that's a good thing. This is a small filbert brush. I'm taking some white and the yellowy green mix, and I'm making some small trees. Using Viridian under the lower branches for the shadow on the ground. I'm making these trees quite pale because they're in the distance. They're also in the sunlight, and that's why I'm using more yellow. This is a favourite old round bristle brush, so the colours that I'm using have expanded a little. I'm using some Viridian, the green, some purple, a bit of blue and the yellow mix. Because the bristles have spread a little, it's quite useful because I can add leaves and texture to a painting. I'm dabbing the bristle brush using the tip of the brush, the end of the bristles, and this gives a kind of dappled, speckled leaf effect, especially when I add extra highlights using the lemon yellow and white. For those who are painting, you might need to pause the video from time to time when it's on fast forward so that you can keep in step. I'm making some parts of the video time-lapse because it would be a long day otherwise for those who are simply watching. Those seem to have enough cover, so I'm starting a new tree with the highlights to the left, using a little lemon yellow and some white. I'm stroking the cerulean blue, the light blue. It's not so easy to see that it's the lighter colour in this video. Now I'm mixing with the yellowy green mix on the palette. This will be to the right hand side of the new bush, using the same dabbing technique. Adding a touch of lemon yellow, it mixes with the colours that are already down and those that are on the brush, so it now appears to be a light shade of green. Purple mixed with the blue, cerulean blue and the light green on the brush. Using other types of paint, this can appear muddy, but I want a variety of colours and it fits the purpose in this instance. Some light yellow and a hint of yellow ochre for variety. A darker area of greenery further on the right. Mixing with the yellow, purple and green shadow, yellow and white for highlights. Scooping up some of the green to create natural shading. Using a larger, flat bristle brush with some white added to cerulean blue, this is going to mark out the river. I'm using the brush sideways on and stroking horizontally as level as I can, just side to side. touch more blue, now some white added to the ultramarine. I'm bringing the blue river all the way to the bottom, at the same time marking the position of the left edge. Now some more ultramarine. I'm adding some purple shadow. Some more ultramarine and purple on the bottom left. Now some white added to the ultramarine. This light purple and blue is a shaded part of the bank in the distance, below the trees. It goes all the way down to the water's edge. I'm using the same colour for the left bank in the shadow. Now I'm adding some viridian and yellow ochre, covering the distant area again. Using the small filbert brush, I've picked up some white to mix with the green, lemon yellow, and yellow ochre, and I'm dabbing on the distant bank at the top of the shadow line. I might need a new filbert brush. This has been used quite a lot, and now the bristles have splayed too much for a simple traditional watercolour. Fortunately, there's still some life in it for a gouache painting. To keep your brush pristine, you need to pay attention to how it is handled. Don't push against the bristles, just stroke gently in one direction. This has lost its shape because I use it going back and forth when I'm applying the paint. This colour is used to break up the solid block of purple shadow. Some lemon yellow below this area to add sunlight and a touch of yellow ochre. Mixing in some ultramarine blue to make a darker green, I'm using small brush strokes to create texture, the impression of grass and undulations in the earth. Using the dark green mix, I'm darkening the shadow beneath the trees in the distance. Now I'm using some Viridian, the green, and some lemon yellow. Now a mix of Viridian with the blue-green mix to create a darker shadow on the bank. Some lemon yellow to create a lighter shade closer to the water's edge. A bit of cerulean blue on the bank. I'm flicking upwards with the brush to create grasses. I'm extending the river to the right using ultramarine and white because I want it to be a bit wider. If you're painting along too, you can make the river wider or leave it as it is. Some ultramarine and purple with a dab of light yellow. I'll use this for some of the grasses on the left bank, flicking the paint in an upwards motion, away from the bank and over the river. Not all grasses grow vertically, so these are at an angle and some will be curved. When you flick upwards, the brush stroke is thicker at the base, and as the tip of the brush leaves the paper, the stroke thins out to a point. Sometimes that's the plan anyway. Adding some yellow ochre with the ultramarine blue to create a different shade for other greenery. I've created an arc shape away from the river where the bank slopes. Using more yellow ochre, adding height to the bushes on the left. I'm lightening the colour by the addition of white. Now painting the top edge of the left bank. This will be lighter because it will catch more light. Now adding both yellows, creating a new green with warmer tones provided by the yellow ochre. Now a little cerulean blue and white. lemon yellow mixed in from the top left edge. Next, a little white. To make the light stand out, I'm adding some darker foliage behind it using the darker blue. Using lemon yellow for the very top edge. Switching to the round bristle brush, this will be good for the speckled leaves. Both yellows and white are on the right edge. A bit more white to make the trees comparatively brighter in the distance. Now I'm filling in some of the white area on the left using yellow ochre and dark blue. I'm creating a dark shadow where there is a dip in the bank. It's not quite a ravine, more of a small hollow. The area in front of this will be lighter, so lemon yellow and white will help to create the correct tonal balance. By not mixing the paint fully and dabbing the brush, I can create multiple tones in one stroke. There is some sunlight streaming down this section. Adding additional white will make this the lightest area. I'm making the bank appear in different sections by using different colours with light and dark areas. Adding some dark for the shadow at the water's edge. For the shaded section in the foreground, I'm starting with a pretty background colour of purple and white, adding some ultramarine for the darker areas. Some more colour on this middle section. I've switched to using a small round brush for the finer grasses, still using the same flicking technique. What this painting needs is another bush on the right hand side. Now this bush needs some shadow, so I'm using ultramarine beneath. Adding white to allow the blue to spread, it brings out the true colour of the ultramarine when it's painted on top. As before, we're using the light yellow and white for the lighter areas. Now a little purple for colour on the left of the river, adding a bit of crimson. These will be the background colours. The darkest parts will have blue added too. Dabbing using the bristle brush allows some of the areas to be slightly lighter so that it doesn't look like one solid block of colour. Switching brushes again to the small filbert brush and adding white to yellow and cerulean blue, a few lighter grasses to give variation. The small flat bristle brush is perfect for this area. I'm using darker colours to darken and deepen the water's shadow, sweeping from left to right. Now I'm adding a few bright grasses coming out of the water like reeds. These should go straight up in the air, or at least be straight. I'm now filling in some of the white area to the right of the river, using the bristle brush and small downward strokes, and allowing multiple colours to show through. Now I'm adding some cerulean blue to create some darker green areas. Some of the lighter yellow will still show through. Now an area of blue and white, which will morph into a cooler shade of blue and green, like the leaves of the rose bay willow herb that's often seen by the river. And before I forget, not that I would, I'm adding some white reflection and highlights to the river, followed by some dark edges where the land meets the water. Back to the bank, adding touches of lighter blue using the addition of more white. Some yellow on the right at the top to create a greener colour. A bit more yellow ochre, I'll continue adding various shades of yellow, blue and green mixed with white to the right bank. A little purple, blue and white, a fusion of colour, the rose bay willow herb mixed with other flora and fauna. Darker areas of shadow using ultramarine. A few lighter tones on the left river bank in the foreground. I'm using the small round brush and a mix of blue and green to make small vertical dabs of taller plants and dotting this area. Dabs of crimson, purple and white for the flowers. ultramarine, yellow ochre and viridian to create some bushes in the distance on the right. They're mostly shaded and possibly some evergreens. I use light colours for the grasses that grow around and in the river. The ones that are on the riverbank, I try and make a large arc and make them curve because they grow and bend over above the water. A few light touches too for the land that reaches out into the river. Now I'm introducing some burnt sienna for the tree trunks. I'll be mixing in a little ultramarine and viridian green to darken the colour. I'm using a very small round brush to create thin wavy lines that reach into the sky. They are thicker at the bottom and thinner towards the top. If you think of a leg, it's thicker at the top than at the bottom. Trees are the opposite. Now, using the round bristle brush, I'm using dark blue and green for the leaves on the trees, mostly blue for the centre, with green around the outside, touches of yellow ochre, and finally highlights using lemon yellow and white. Final touches, adding yellow and white highlights to the left tree. I hope that you've enjoyed this painting tutorial and had fun if you painted too. I look forward to being back soon.